Hi, welcome to FliteTest. I'm Josh, and I want to sincerely thank you for purchasing the FT Nutball swappable speed build. By you guys doing this, you've enabled us to go ahead and continue to make content that will always be free, educational, entertaining, and hopefully inspiring. But what we first want to do is we want to go ahead and go over the parts that we have, go over the parts you're going to need, and we'll go ahead and get started. But before we build our airframe, the first thing we want to do is build your power pod. Now, the directions for the power pod is listed in the description. There's a nice link and a nice video that will give you the ability to build this, and then we're going to utilize this power pod for the airframe to line everything up, so you need to build this first. First we have is the basic Nutball kit. As you're going to see, it's just a rudder, main body, barbecue skewers, push rods, control horns, popsicle stick, a throw meter for when we're done, and of course our wonderful zip tie that David Vindestol loves. The tools we're going to need for this to complete will be over here, and that's going to be our scissors, a sanding block if we choose, a simple scrap piece of foam to spread some glue, a knife if we choose, and of course our 9-gram servos that we're going to go ahead and use to put in there. Our first step is to cut a 45-degree bevel cut in the top of our elevator. Now to do this, we're going to go ahead and simply fold up the elevator 180 degrees to the top surface. We're going to take a sharp razor blade and simply cut a 45-degree bevel along the very back. Now if you cut past the center line where the paper is, don't worry, you can simply take a piece of tape and go back over it and seal that off. Just like that. Make sure that your control throws have plenty of freedom, that there's no binding in it, and we're ready to go ahead and do the rudder. Next step is to bevel the rudder. Now if you guys are in an educational institution or someplace with maybe a child you don't want to use a razor blade if you don't have to, you can always take a simple hard sanding block and simply sand a 45-degree bevel into your foam. It'll take a little bit longer, but you'll get the same results in the end. Our next step is to put the polyhedral into the Nutball's wings. To do this, we're going to actually take the top surface of the Nutball and we're going to install the power pod actually on the top surface. We're then going to flip open over the Nutball, and we're going to crack these guys loose. What this is going to do is going to give us a proper amount of dihedral. What we want to make sure though is that we don't rock this one way or the other. We're going to go ahead and do one side at a time. Fill in the gap with glue. Make sure you have a hot glue gun that can supply plenty of hot glue and not cool off before you get to the very end. I like to stop and start roughly 1/2 of an inch from the hinge line and the leading edge. Very easy just to flip this up, spread the glue around, lay it flat, and if you have something heavy, you can always set it right on top here, making sure that the wingtip touches the ground. Go ahead and let that dry and we'll do the other side. If you have a little excess glue, you can always take a squeegee, a little scrap piece of foam, and simply wipe it off and drive it down back into that crack again. We're ready to install the control horns onto our elevator and also our rudder. Now it's important with the control horns to make sure that you put it on the top surface, and otherwise the opposite side of where your bevel cut is. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and just do a test fit really quick. Just drop it down in the notch. Now because this is laser cut and specific to this control horn, you don't have to worry about alignment on the hinge line. It'll be perfect right out of the bat. So we'll go ahead, make sure that we've made a groove, that we're happy with the fit. Then we're going to go back, simply put a small bead of glue right down in that slot after we've opened it up a little bit. Set the control horn down in. Make sure that both parts of the control horn are firmly down against the foam and let it dry. We'll repeat the process with the rudder. After the control horns are on, we're simply going to go ahead and install our power pod the proper direction this time onto our Nutball. Once we've got that firmly installed, our next step will be to take some barbecue skewers and go directly into the foam as perpendicular to the firewall as possible, and use the pointy end with a rotating motion to roughly go in about 1 inch or about 3 centimeters on each side. Once you're happy with the fit, go ahead and make a rough cut, roughly about 1.25 inches. The important thing is that they protrude out at roughly about 1/4 inch on each side, and that they're the same size. Go ahead and remove your power pod. Put a small drop of glue right over the hole. This will be getting driven down into the hole as you put your barbecue skewer in there. And simply rotate as you're pushing in until the barbecue skewer only protrudes out just over 1/4 inch. Keeping in mind the firewall is roughly 1/8 inch. And while this is still wet, we can actually go ahead and simply slide it back into our power pod, push it down, and let it dry the rest of the way. That'll hold everything in the proper alignment. Our next step is to glue on the rudder. To do this, we're simply going to go ahead and put a bead of glue on the very front here. And we don't have to go too excessive because we'll go back with a bead of glue on each side to firmly lock it down. We're going to go ahead and push this through. Simply take it to the point where it bottoms out. Then we can take our throw gauge. This is a 90-degree angle right here. We can simply set this on here and hold it until the glue is thoroughly dry. Or if it doesn't move and you're happy with the alignment, you can just leave it as it is. Next step, now that the rudder is firmly glued, is just to go back and reinforce it a little bit with a small bead of glue on both sides. And then we'll take a scrap piece of foam and simply squeegee it down into the crack and wipe off any excess that we may have. Now that our rudder is glued on, our next step is to cut the reinforcement for where the back part of our power pod is going to mount. To do this, we're simply going to go ahead and take a pair of scissors and this popsicle stick. We're going to take off the squared edge right here. And we're going to cut it roughly, it doesn't have to be exact, to the same dimensions as our slots. That way when it pushes down, it's pushing down on the full part of the power pod. Once we're happy with that, we'll simply put a small bead of glue on the very bottom and line it up between the two holes where our zip tie is going to go. And then just center it up and get it nice and square and looking proper. Next step is we're going to remove our power pod and then install this little zip tie going through the bottom, back through the hole again, and then through the zip tie itself. Just click it down a couple clicks just to get it fastened. Our next step will be to reinstall the power pod. Take our barbecue skewer, go through, and get a hold of that zip tie and push it the rest of the way through. Once this is nice and firm, you can go ahead and tighten that zip tie down on the very top so it's just snug. You don't have to get too tight with it. Just enough where it's snug and holds it down firmly. That's going to keep the back part of your power pod firmly fastened. You can then go back and trim your barbecue skewer to the proper length so you have just about 1/4 of an inch over on each side. Our next step is to take our servos that we've already installed our linkage stoppers to and also center up our servos on. And make sure when you put your linkage stoppers on that you only go about 2 holes out. This plane does not need much throw to perform beautifully, and if you go too far out it's going to be way too sensitive. We're going to slide it down in the hole. It's a snug fit, just push it down in. And then take your second servo and do the same. Put a little drop of glue under each one. And then push the servos right down on top of the glue. Our next step is to take the supplied push rod and enter it through the very top hole of your control horn that you've glued in. Take the other end and slide it through your linkage stopper. Next step is to plug the servos into the receiver. It's a good idea if you want to take a little piece of tape and put them around your servo leads and label them elevator and the proper channels that they go into. That way you can make a much quicker swap in the field and not have to worry about which servo belongs to which one. Now we can leave this right on the bench here, and we're going to go ahead and plug in the battery and make sure that our servos are properly centered up. From this point on, we're going to go ahead and grab our elevator, keeping it in a neutral position, tighten down the linkage stopper, nice and snug. We'll do the same process with the rudder. Now that our linkage stoppers are fastened down, we're going to go ahead and check our throws. We're going to lay the bottom of our throw gauge on and bring the elevator up to the throw gauge. We don't want this to actually move up and move off the paper. This is perfect. This is good for beginner setup. We're going to repeat the same process with the rudder. Now that we have this done, we're going to go ahead and reinstall our receiver onto our Velcro. Install our power pod. Put our rear barbecue skewer in. If you want to keep the wear and tear down on your tail, you can simply add a barbecue skewer left over and hot glue it right on this tail, protruding out just a little bit. This will save your tail from wear and tear and dragging on the ground. Well friends, the Nutball is now complete. I hope you enjoyed the build. I hope it was quick and stress-free for you. And I hope you got to make a good memory with it too. I also want to sincerely thank you for supporting us through purchasing this product. I hope you guys have a great time flying it. Your support is the key ingredient to what we need to continue doing what we're doing now. But in the meantime, I want to go fly.